Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Welcome home to Torah. Welcome to the Yiboneh Beit Midrash. A warm, very warm welcome. Now, we're in Parashat Emor, and we're going to be starting with chapter 24, but I need to give this introduction. First of all, the general introduction. We always use the Hebrew text of the Yakar as the basis for our discussion, and you can find links down below to previous classes, things we did on the Omer, because we're in the period of the counting of the Omer, between Pesach and Shavuos. Also, Pesach Sheni. Tonight is Pesach Sheni, which is second chances. There's also a link down below to a class we gave on Pesach Sheni. But this is going to be the controversial introduction that I want to give. People ask questions on Facebook. It's very difficult for me to just type out a text, a short text. So I've wanted to answer a person's query for a long time, and I decided after preparing for tonight's class, this would be a perfect opportunity to explain, hopefully in just a few minutes now, and then you'll see the relevance later on. The question was posed on a Ben Noach website, I wouldn't call it a website, a Facebook page, a group. And I'm not even going to mention the person's name, nor am I going to mention the name of the Facebook page. But the person asked, and I'm going to assume he asked in a really sincere way, not in a mocking way. We're going to talk about mocking tonight. What's the relevance of the Torah? It's written 3,000 years ago. Why are all the stories, or a majority of the stories, or a significant amount of the stories, not relevant? What's it have to do with me? And this is coming from a Ben Noach. I'm hoping at this point, anybody who has studied and considers themselves a righteous Noahide would have reached by now, after reading from Genesis till the end, in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 4. It says, and I'll read it in English first, the Torah that Moses commanded is the heritage of the congregation of Jacob. Okay? So we say, the Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha kehilas Yaakov. Every learned Jewish child, one of the first verses that he'll ever learn is this verse. I'm also going to be giving a class on the 13 principles of our faith, which are also relevant to a righteous Noahide. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be on the Noahide World Center, but in the website and Facebook page. But in the meantime, what does someone who reads this understand? I would hope by now they would understand the only way to understand what the Torah, the message the Torah is conveying, is to ask those who stood at Mount Sinai. the witnesses themselves, that it's a morasha kehilas Yaakov. It is an inheritance to the congregation of Jacob. Now, in one of my earlier classes, when I discussed the 7 Noahide laws, there are 2 laws that are very pertinent, and that is the law of stealing, right? And 7 Noahide laws, one of them, do not steal. And morasha, it belongs to the Jewish people, it's an inheritance to them. So don't read the Torah and think you know what it means. It's impossible. You can only go to those whom it belongs to find out what it says. Sorry for that, to break your heart. But if you got to that point and you don't know what it means, I'm telling you what it means. And there's another way to read the word morasha as mo'urasa, mean betrothed. It's a betrothal. This is like the ring, the wedding ring that the Jewish people are wearing. It's the Torah. And therefore also one of the 7 Noahide laws is against adultery. So don't dare take our Torah and think you have any clue of what it's trying to convey. Once you realize, I have no idea, I can try as far as I can get, and perhaps that's okay. And especially there's a difference between an akum, an idol worshiper. They should not learn Torah, because you know what they're going to do? They're going to come and fight. They're just learning to be contrary, right? So it's really forbidden for them to learn for that purpose. What are you, fighting against God and God's representatives on this earth? Right? But a Ben Noach may involve themselves, especially in anything that they're obligated in, which is a majority of the Torah, right? Any logical mitzvah, besides beyond the 7, and any ethical mitzvah, okay? So, There's certainly plenty of ethics. And that's pretty much the whole Torah, really. You know, when you think, what's the Torah? If I ask somebody, I heard this as a mashal, an analogy. If you ask somebody, okay, there's a book on the shelf. You read it? Tell me what it's about. Or I want to read it. What's it about? So the first thing I do is I read the first page. I read the last page, and I figure out everything in between. If it's a consistent message, is probably that same message. The Torah is about doing chesed, right? This is what Yiboneh is all about. Chesed. How? Hashem, what did he do? Well, first of all, he created such a beautiful world, but he clothed the naked. And in my opinion, he brought Adam, his wife. It's great chesed. And what did he do at the end? He buried Moshe, meaning after Moses died, nobody was involved in the burial because nobody knows where Moshe is buried. It was only Hashem himself, who's considered a relative. I'm using that word loosely, figured as a close to Moshe, so he buried him. So it's all about chesed shalemis. Okay, so basically that's what the Torah is about. And I wanted to say that if this person is coming with a legitimate question and he was only looking for answers, meaning what other people have to say, cool, that's great. But if the person is mocking and wondering in a certain sense, why is the Torah not relevant? You know, there must be something else going on here. Or just trying to, you know, I'm using the word mocking loosely. We're going to see our Parsha now. Let's go to our Parsha. And it's in Leviticus chapter 24. For those with the English sheets, you'll see it's number 1. So it's chapter 24, verse 10 and 11. Really, we're starting with 10. Now, the son of an Israelite woman, okay, so what does that mean in Hebrew? Went out. V'yetze ben Isha Yisraelit. So I want to get this clear so we're not going to be confused. A ben Isha Yisraelit. His mother was Jewish, was an Israelite. His father actually was a ben Ish Mitzri. Okay, he was the son. Now, we have a tradition that none of us intermarried in Egypt. So how did this come about that he was a result of this intermarriage when that never took place in Egypt? We'll have to find out shortly. But it says, V'yinatsu b'machaneh. Now that's plural already. They, who's they? You don't know until you read just a few more words. He actually got in a fight with, and it's not this he. They fought with each other. Very important. He fought with someone who's called an Israeli, an Ish Israeli. Meaning he got in a fight, a quarrel, with a person who had both parents were Israelites, Jewish. Now, what did he end up doing? He ended up going out and blaspheming the Yakar. He cursed Hashem, and we find out what his mother's name was. In other words, when we originally read the text, it doesn't say who either one of these guys' names was. We only know a little bit about them. One is the son of an Israelite woman, who happens to be the son of an Egyptian. Now, they went out. I'm sorry, I did skip one thing. He went out among the children of Israel. It's very important because we'll have to deal with that. Betoch b'nei Israel. Okay, we'll deal with that. Anyway, they quarreled in the camp, which is also significant. Now, the word v'yinatsu, you have to be sitting down. The word Nazi means to provoke God. It's not a coincidence. Just like the word Hamas means to be criminally violent. Okay, we can go on and on with Russians, China, and all. Every name is significant because you know why? Because the Jewish people are prophetic people. Okay, I don't want to get into that. Let's move on. And then we hear about her name after he pronounced the divine name and cursed God. So they brought him to Moses. Apparently there's going to be, we'll see, a court case. And we don't hear at this moment what happened. We'll see it in the text. His mother's name was Shulamit, the daughter of Dibri. And we'll have to find out what that all means. I want to go just to the Rashi to start with, because there's going to be 3 major opinions of what happened. When he went out from his world. Each person is considered a microcosm of the universe, and he forfeited his share in the world to come, so he left his world. That would be one opinion. If you looked into the verses of 5 through 9, remember, we're started at 10, But 5 through 9 deal with the lechem apani. The showbreads, believe it or not, a miracle occurred because they were placed there every Friday, hot, fresh, soft, and they were only eaten the following Friday. So they were there for 8 days minimum. There are actually times where it could be there 9 days or even longer. For example, when Yontif falls out on Thursday night, when a holiday falls out on Thursday night, so they bake them and put them on Thursday afternoon before Yontif begins. So that would be an additional day. And then if it was a 2-day, which we apparently did have 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Okay, we'll have to have a discussion about that another time. Already back then, 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, so now you have an extra day to prepare beforehand. So what was he mocking? Listen, it's surely the practice of kings to eat warm, fresh bread every day. Here you're giving, well, it's a sacrifice, and it's not really a sacrifice, but it's basically being served to the Kohanim. And therefore, they're going to be eating bread that's going to be a week old, that's going to be either stale or cold or moldy, who knows what? The answer is no. The truth is there was a miracle that happened, that they were served warm and fresh the following week. For some reason, a miracle occurred. So he apparently did not know this. But that's one idea that he was mocking, because it's right away. It says he went out right after the verses 5 through 9 that discuss this miraculous. Well, it doesn't say it's miraculous, but we know now that it was absolutely miraculous. So he was mocking this thing due to a lack of knowledge, perhaps. But even with a lack of knowledge, do you mock, or do you sincerely ask, "No, what's the deal? I want to know. Why do you do this? Isn't it cold?" At least, you come up with your presumptions, and then you hear the answer. No, it's not cold. It's not stale. It's actually a miracle, and this is what God commanded. And then the third opinion, that when he left the court, in other words, okay, so some background. This man who had no Jewish father actually will not end up with a tribal plot in Eretz Yisrael. So while they're in the desert, in the middle, all the tribes were, and you had the Erev Rav around them, and they were delineated. There were 3 on each side, and they encamped together with their own tribes. So this person, whose mother's from Dan, as we saw at the end of the verse, his mother's name was Shulamit, the daughter of Dibri, the tribe of Dan, figured he'll just park his tent over there. There's actually nothing wrong with that. But what he did was he demanded that this should be his. In other words, you come and you ask permission, maybe you pay rent, whatever it is. But you come with such an attitude that it's entitlement. It's coming to me because of my father and because of my mother. But guess what? That's not how the law works. The law is it goes according to the father. Okay, so they took him to court, meaning to find out the truth. That's what the Sanhedrin is, to reveal what the truth is. Okay, it's not always a court case of guilty or not guilty. In this case, he made such a ruckus that they had to make it clear to him that's not how it works. And as a result of him feeling, I'm using the word feeling, this emotional separation from the Jewish people and perhaps how he was treated, which we're going to get into, he arose and blasphemed Hashem. I think that's going to be it for now. Okay, so let's go into the Yakar. I think I just want to see if there's really a lot in that Rashi, but I don't want to spend too much time at the moment. Okay, so let's go into the Yakar and see where he is going to take us for a journey. Here we go. We read the verse, V'yetze ben ish Yisraeliyit, right? The son of the female Jew. Lo parata katuv shem shel echad mehem. You notice that the verses did not tell us any of the names of each of these two people who were quarreling. Lahorot shayu shneim pigumim. In order to teach us that both of them, now what is a pigum? A pigum is a blemish. It's some kind of defect. What are we talking about? What kind of defect could we possibly be talking about? I mean, even just if we just read the verses to begin with, so perhaps a defect of this person's lineage, that's all we know, that his father was not Jewish. Is that enough of a defect? Perhaps we're talking about a much deeper personality issue. Kikol hayotze l'riv maher. I'm going to put my finger, right? Like anybody who's quick to get into an argument, who is who wants to fight, who wants to quarrel, quick to do so, Vadai hu pagum. This is a problem. This is a pagum. This is a blemish. This is a defect. So for those out there who are listening, whether you're Jewish or not, you understand. You can come with questions. How do you pose the question? Right? Are you looking for a fight or are you looking for the truth? Very important. Eino min hanashim hanodaim bishmam l'shem v'tehila. Remember, these names, their names were not mentioned. So these people were like nobodies, and maybe like second-class citizens. Perhaps they felt this way, but because of their pagum, because of their eagerness to get into quarrels with people, they are from the pachutim. They are from the less refined. Pachutim means the inferior ones. Anshe biliya'al, meaning they were actually evil. Gam b'nei b'li shem. And you know what? They had no good name. You know, we call shem tov. You're going to leave this world, what are you going to leave? A good name. So here they didn't have a good name. Either people knew trouble walked in the door, or I've had it with this guy, I don't have the patience for him, he's just arguing all the time. I don't know exactly, you know what I mean? But they didn't have a good name. Lo haya behem ki im shem hayachas shel avotam. That's why they're sons of Jews. We don't even know their names, other than one had both Jewish parents and the other one had one Jewish mother and one Egyptian father. That's all we know about them. So it's only the only thing we know about them is the little bit of their lineage. Shezeh haya ben Yisraelit v'zeh ish Yisraeli. That's all we know. This one had a Jewish mother and the other one had both Jewish parents. And now that's why it actually says in our verse, v'yinatzu b'machaneh. What is v'yinatzu? It's they, the plural. They both argued. They were both pagumim. They were both quick to fight. Ki shnehem ayu ba'alei matzah u'meriva. Matzah, believe it or not, you look in the dictionary, it means meriva. Maybe it's a play on the word like masa meriva, but it's actually in the dictionary is mem tzadek hey, which is katata, which is argumentative and looking for fights. Now, I'm going to ask Yaakov Yisrael, just help me. V'nit galgel choiva al yedei chayav. I have many ways I would like to translate this, and I'm sure none of them are correct, but they're close. One is like adding insult to injury. One is like one bad person brings out the bad in another person. You have a better translation or a better understanding?
Once a person is obligated, meaning there's a chiyuv.
Liable. Once a person is liable.
So then it's coming throughout from whom? Person is already liable from before.
So say that again clearly.
Person is liable. He did something wrong. Okay?
Yeah.
Where did it come from? How did such a thing come about? Because he was liable from before.
Okay, that's good. That's a good explanation because we're going to see that in context. Ki al yedei shezeh hayisraeli nichnas imo meriva goram lo legadev Hashem hanichbad. That through this, the Yisraeli, meaning the one with the both Jewish parents, he entered into an argument with the other guy who only had a Jewish mother, and that's what caused the one we're going to call him a half-breed, okay? That's what we're going to, just so we're on the same page, caused the half-breed to go ahead and blaspheme Hashem. Now the clear cars, you want to add something? Snowball effect. Ukatsat raya lezeh. Now he wants to bring a little bit of a proof to this. Mimash ne'emar, from what it says in, now we're going to be dealing with verse 15, 17, and 19. So just let's get this clear. In verse 15, again of the same chapter 24, it says, "In the children of Israel, and to the children of Israel, you shall speak, saying, anyone who blasphemes his God shall bear his sin. Ve'el b'nei Yisrael tedaber lemor, ish ki yikalel elukav." Okay, that's what the clear card is bringing down right away. Now, if we're dealing with, there's different types of mitzvahs and there's different ways to categorize them. There's mitzvahs between me and God, and there's mitzvahs between me and man. So things to do with me and God, I'm like blessing or cursing. Okay, that's between me and God. But then there's a lot in the Torah that has to do with between me and man, and we're going to call those tort laws, damages, right? So the Kli Yakar is asking, how in this paragraph that's dealing with a blasphemer are we injecting verse 17? If any man strikes down a human being, he shall be put to death. Vish ki yakar kol nefesh. So you're striking down a human being, which is between man and man, okay? Just like do not murder appears on the second set of the five, there's 10 commandments, there's 5 on each tablet. So the first 5 between me and God, and the last 5 are between me and man. Do not murder. Actually, each one matches up. Number 1 goes to 6, number 2 goes to 7, and it is interesting, right, that I am the Lord your God, and do not murder, because man is created in the image of God. But keep it aside, these are tort laws, and it even, well, let's just read the Kli Yakar. He says, furthermore, shapasik zeh kula mutar, that statement, if that vish ki yitain mum ba'amito, as we just said, this is in verse 17. Actually, not 17, sorry. Where's that verse? Sorry. It's Leviticus 24, verse 19. And a man who inflicts an injury upon his fellow man. And we're going to deal with these verses, just as he did, so shall be done to him. So in the Hebrew, it's the ish ki yitain mum ba'amito. When one person puts a mum into, and we're going to have to deal with this word, ba'amito, someone from his nation, okay, another fellow. And we're going to deal with these words, ka'asher asa, just as he did, ken ya'aselo, so shall be done to him. But then the Kli Yakar points out that the verse actually says, shever tachas shever, injury for injury, ayin tachas ayin, an eye for an eye, shein tachas shein, and tooth for a tooth shall be given to him the same injury. Now, just you should know, because this is a very interesting question. We know, because we have the history. It's right, Marasha Kilas Yaakov. It's our legacy. Never in history did we ever pluck out an eye for somebody who plucked out someone else's eye. Never did we cut off a hand for someone who injured someone else's hand. In fact, we have a tradition from Sinai that it's a monetary compensation, insurance, so to speak. Okay? When there's 5 different types, whether it's unemployment, whether it's doctor bills, and on and on and on. And pain and liability for libel and embarrassment and whatnot. In fact, the word ayin yud nun, just figure it out. Ayin, the letter for eye, the word for eye is ayin, and you spell it out, because that's what it is, ayin yud nun. Okay? So if you take each letter that comes when, right before, right after. So you have the letters ayin, what follows that? A pei. Okay? And you have yud, you have a kaf. And then you have an ayin, a nun, and what comes right after a nun? A samech. Spells kesef. Kesef is money. Okay? We have a tradition, it always has been money. So who are you to come and tell us that, hey, what's the relevance of the Torah? I don't get it. Something 3,000 years ago. You would never understand it had you not had the Jews to ask. Okay? So start from that point. Ask Jews. Listen to Torah classes, and every single Torah class, I hope, should bring relevance. If you don't hear the relevance, ask the rabbi, what relevance is that to me in my life? And hopefully he will be able to explain it, or someone else in the class can explain it, because it has to be relevant. And if you're not getting it, pray to Hashem to open up your mind. Okay, let's move forward. So the Kli Yakar says this verse is totally superfluous. Shapasik zeh kula mutar, meaning the last one we just read in verse 19, because in 20 it says, as we just read, shever tachas shever, ayin tachas. It's all about monetary compensation. So what do you need to say about all these tort laws? First of all, the tort laws were taught already in Mishpatim, in Exodus chapter 21, verses 23 through 27. And it's repeated again in Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 21. So what's it doing over here? What is the tort laws doing over here. And so, and just read the word. It already tells you what you're going to do to the person. Shever tachas shever. Okay, so now he says, the drum roll, please. This whole parsha is telling you, right? It's trying to teach you and train you that what we're dealing with is the negative aspect of somebody who goes around and is easy to quarrel, wants to get in fights with people. He's just looking for a fight. Shein shalom yotze mitok mariva. Peace is not going to come out of such a circumstance. It's certainly not going to come from a person who's a quarreler. Ayidei mariva yavo shayaka nefesh adam. Right? As a result of the quarrel, what will happen? Okay, he lists a whole bunch of things. So it doesn't mean it only has to be that someone will strike somebody, or behema, or even damage an animal, or viyazika, or cause any kind of damage, whether it's begufa, whether it's a physical damage, or b'mamono, or whether his property, damaging people's property. I mean, gosh, you ever see these things called road rage? And when you hear about them, whether it's in the newspaper or on these short videos, cop videos, whatever it is, like, guys, everyone calm down and take a breath, It says, ready for this? This is in Kedushin. Now, this is going to be hard to explain. Now, all the Meforshim I saw did not bring this. So the Yakar is bringing this as perhaps something to take to heart. Kol ha-posel b'momo posel. Now, I did bring the original source, which is number 7 in Kedushin, 70a. I'll read to you first our understanding, because that's the statement, that anyone who disqualifies others basically is disqualifying themselves because of their own flaws. Now, let's just read how they use the translation of the Gemara. Anyone who disqualifies others by stating that their lineage is flawed, now those words don't actually appear, let's just say because of their because of what they see in someone else, a flaw, that is a sign that he himself is flawed. Another indication that this person has this problem is that they never speak of the praise of others. Now, Shmuel said, if one is habitually, right, someone who's accustomed in doing this by claiming that others always have the problem, he disqualifies himself with his own flaws. Meaning the very flaw that he accuses them of having is in fact the one that he has. I like the word projection, but that could be just a psychological term used. I have no idea. People project their own problems on others. You see it more clearly because it's really within you. You don't have the guts to really examine it and work on it. So instead of looking at yourself, right, when you point your finger to somebody, how many fingers are you pointing at yourself? Well, I don't know. Let's just say you have 3 other fingers pointing to yourself, but maybe it's 4. But anyway, the point, you all heard these ideas. These are fundamental. So that's a big problem. That's a big problem. So, Lakach Emor. So the Yakar says, now we understand. V'ish ki yitain b'mum ba'amito. So any man who inflicts injury upon his own people, his fellow man. Ready for this? The Jews. Lahatil mum bikdoshim. It's like you're not supposed to even suspect people who are basically righteous. You can, if something is so obvious, you can worry about it and talk to people about it, and you'll find out perhaps your whole impression was wrong of what you thought you saw. But basically, you're placing or you're throwing this mum onto people that shouldn't be suspected to begin with. Shouldn't be, they're not with a mum. They're called kadoshim. They're called holy people. That's what it means, ba'amito, his own people. Kasher asah, and just as he did, we saw those words, so too you do to him. So, ba'akimat safatav dahave masa. Now this is a little bit of a complicated Gemara because it doesn't really conclude the issue here, but there is a Gemara. Where is it? It's It's in Bab Mitzvah 90b. You see it on the page? Maybe I didn't put it in.
Yes, number 4.
Number 4. Okay, so this is a little complicated because it's two sides to an argument, and we didn't get to the conclusion. But there's a machlokas between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. If somebody is trying to muzzle, you're not supposed to muzzle an animal while he's working. So let's say the animal is working, and you're either verbally, through your verbal abuse, you're causing the animal not to eat while he's working. Is that called a maaseh? Is it an action or not an action? So there's an opinion that just verbally doing that is, I guess, scaring, right? The bejesus out of the animal. He's not going to stop and eat. He's expecting a scolding, and he doesn't like the scolding, apparently. So Rabbi Yochanan says the person is liable, whatever it is. He maintains the twisting of one's mouth. That's what it means by akimat sefatav, crooked lips, right? The one is using his mouth not in a holy way. In this case, you're abusing the animal verbally, is considered abuse. Is considered an action, even if it's only slight. So we see that this is an action. So too, that's why it says, Kasher asa, just as he did. Even though it uses the word like aseh as action, so too you do to him, it's basically, even though it's only verbal. Ki yomro lo sheposh lo b'mamomo. Basically, because he said to him, right, that the person has a blemish. That's really what he's making this accusation. Now, what accusation says, ulamata medaber b'mumamish. If we just continue reading, this is in verse 20, for example, we're really talking about an actual mum, an actual blemish. That's why it says in verse 20, Kain yinatein bo. Where do we have number 20? That's number 5. That's what we said. And let's just see what the Hebrew is. Kain yaselo. No, towards the end of the verse. Kasher yitain. No, the very last 3 words. Kain yitain lo. There you go. So shall it be inflicted upon him. So it shall be inflicted upon him. Now this is going to be very interesting where we're going with this. V'chein zeh bein Yisraelit v'zeh ish Yisraeli. Meaning both of them are going to be affected by the quarrel. Kol echad pasal chavera b'mum. Each one was afflicting the other. Ki shneim lo ayu anshe shem lo nodu ki'im mitzad avotam. None of them were of good character, and we only know them, the fact that their parents could have been of good character, that's it. They were Jews. Now, the last paragraph of Emor, V'yetze ben Isha ha-Yisraelit. So then it says, went out. The words went out, V'yetze. Who went out? And where did he go out from? He went out, who? This was the man who had just a Jewish mother. And his father was a Ish Mitzri. V'hu ben Ish Mitzri. What are we talking about? Who is this person? He's the Mitzri Shahargu Moshe b'Shem Mefarish. This is the Egyptian that Moses killed using God's holy name when they were in Egypt. Now, who was this guy? Let me give you an idea. He was a taskmaster, and he convinced the Balabait, whoever Dibri, right, Shulamit's husband, that he should go out and work extra. You know, that's what the taskmaster's job is, to work people very hard, and he did. And then he slipped into her bed early in the morning as if he was her husband. Remember, we asked the question, I thought none of the women intermarried or fooled around or promiscuous. Well, she was not. I'm going to call it rape. I think that's a legitimate term when, in this case, okay, let's just put it that way, when someone says they are who they are and they're not. And that has many ramifications. Al Kain, Kol Hayamim Hayimegade Betoch Libo. This child was whom? The child whose father was killed by Moshe using God's holy name. He's the same one who's using or cursing the holy name. He's holding on to this resentment, however you want to say it. Now, he also stood at Sinai. He also converted with everyone else. What's going on here? You lived through the miracles, the makot, the plagues, the miracles, everything. You left Egypt with the Jews. You saw God at Har Sinai. You saw the miracles. You ate the man, and you're still going to curse God. It had to be something that was long ago, trauma perhaps, something that was, he says, betoch libo. He was already cursing God from his childhood. V'lo nodeh b'chutz hadavar. But this thing was not known. This thing was not visible to other people because he didn't walk around cursing God. It was only something in his mind or his heart for all these years. Now we have a very interesting statement in Pirkei Avot, chapter 4, Mishnah 4, which you will find on, please help me, number 9. And whoever desecrates the divine name covertly is punished in public. So in the Hebrew, it says, someone who is, covertly, in private, he's already cursing God in private. His payment, obviously the payment is going to be done publicly. It's going to come out. It's going to come out. It's going to come out. That's all I can tell you. How many of us, I started off by saying we are a prophetic people. How often does it happen to us? We have not so innocent thoughts. And Baruch Hashem, Hashem awakens us, sends us messages, hashkacha pratit, however it is. You stub your toe, you lose money in a deal, whatever, and you actually can connect dots. Say, you know what? It's a kapara. It's an atonement. I realize I did something wrong. Hopefully, measure for measure, mita keneged mita. Somewhere along the line, you're able to see with clarity what it is that you did wrong, because the Shem talks to every single one of us. He's in our lives, and we just have to open up our eyes and take the veil off, as they say. He says like this: Al kain siviv Hashem sheyetze me'ahalo b'tok b'nei Yisrael. Therefore, what did God do? He caused, Hashem caused that this person walks out of his tent, b'tok b'nei Yisrael. B'tok means within the Jewish people, kedei shetigale ra'ato b'kahal, in order that it would be revealed his negative character trait, his evil traits amongst the congregation. We can all see it. Kikach hamida b'chilul Hashem. That is the character trait we're dealing with of desecrating God's name. Now he ends by saying the yachol liyot, it's very possible. That's why it says the word vayetze. If we go back to where the story of Moses, when he goes out and he does kill this Egyptian using God's holy name, if I'm not mistaken, it's in chapter 2 of Exodus, verse 11. Look at number 10. Now it came to pass in those days that Moses grew up and went out. See the Hebrew word? V'yetze el achav. And he looked at their burdens. He saw the Egyptian man striking a Hebrew man of his brothers. And then it says, as Yakar is about to say, let's just continue in the Yakar. So it went out, just like Moses said. Gamani eitze legadev. This is remember, it's measure for measure. It's going to come out in a certain way where the person should have been aware. Or God talks to us through everything that happens. He says, so too, I'm going to go out. And that's the word. He also goes out, v'yetze. And also by Moses, it mentions specifically, v'yifen ko v'ko. He looked this way and that way. V'yar ki ein ish. He saw there was no person. Now, the Meforshim explains that that's because Moses was able to see this person was, this Egyptian was not going to convert. See, if there's any potential that he's going to convert, that means there's going to be good people coming out of him. Well, let's just say, even for the non-Jew, you can still be, a ger toshav, or having righteous Gentile children who's going to benefit and benefit the world. So this person had none of that, and that's the simple pshat to a certain extent. Maybe that's not simple pshat. Simple pshat is he looked around, there was nobody there. What I just told you was a deeper level. But anyway, the Yakar says va'asa b'tzina. So when Moshe did it, he did it in a, let's say, modest, private way. And what does this Megadev do? The opposite. Everything is right. Ani etzei betok b'nei Yisrael lasot b'ravim. I'm going to do this so bad. I'm going to do it like Mahadrim min Mahadrim. If I'm going to already bless God, and that's a euphemism, I'm going to do it Mahadrim. I'm not going to do it in my bathroom or in my closet, but I'm going to go out there. Now, I found two things I want to discuss with you, and this is going to take a lot of time. On the very back page of the English, there's a beautiful piece that comes from the Art Scroll Medrash, in other words, the Art Scroll on Vayikra Rabbah. It's very worthwhile for those who have it. It really deals with character development. So I just want to go through it quickly because I have something else I want to share with you. And that is from a website called Hardcore Masorah. That's the name of it. And it really, they're very, very important messages. So let's go with the Vayikra Rabbah message from Art Scroll. So he begins by just mentioning that obviously a lot of things are not clear here, exactly what he did, why he went out, and what caused him to utter words of blasphemy in public. I think we had a little bit of an idea already. The Chizkiyahu Kahan actually asked a great question, and that is, like I mentioned, how could it be that a person who grew up with all the miracles that happened and saw God at Har Sinai, experienced God at Har Sinai, can come to curse his name? So there's three major opinions in the Medrash. Reb Levi says he went out of his world because every human being is a miniature world. So when a person rebels against God, he forfeits his humanity. Basically, he left his microcosmic realm. Okay? Basically, you should understand that no matter where you are on the spiritual ladder, no one is immune to sin, even in its worst forms. People are extremely vulnerable to spiritual setbacks, and it takes very little to trigger the kind of fall experienced by the blasphemer in our passage. Constant vigilance is needed to protect one's spiritual attainments. Now, just to give you an example, the dream of Yaakov with the angels going up and down teaches us that lesson. In 12-step programs or other recovery programs, they tell you there's no such thing as spiritual stagnation. You're either growing or you're not growing. The same thing exactly in Judaism. You're either growing or you're not growing. There's no such thing as stagnation. The angels are either going up or down. They're not hanging on to a certain, what do they call that? A rung of a ladder and just being still. So this is a very important lesson. Without vigilance, one is liable at any time to succumb to temptation or crisis of faith and exit the world in which he had lived as a human being bearing the image of God. Okay. The second sage, that was Rabbi Barachia, he mentioned that it's based on the previous verses that mentioned about what? About the lechem hapanim, about these breads that are over a week old. It's either 8 days or beyond in some cases. So this is an expression of leitzanis, an expression of mockery. Okay, this mockery can drown out 100 well-reasoned arguments for taking serious things seriously. I mean, when you ask a question, so you can ask a question on that question, but don't interrupt the person. Oh, you know better. Guy's already trying to answer you, and you're already like slugging them up. This is only going to create more animosity. The person's like either going to give up on you or just get in a fight with you. I mean, I have to work on myself. Okay, so anyway, that's what's going to happen. The mocker is not good. In this way, scoffing at a single Torah law, principle, or lesson can topple one from the heights of inspiration to the depths of heresy. I just want to go back to the bottom here. Such is the nature of scoffers. When something appears odd in their eyes, they do not think of suspecting their own deficiencies. One of the Yakar's famous expressions, and believe me, he did not make this up, right? He's based on earlier sources. The goal of acquiring knowledge is to know that you do not know. I mean, can you imagine? The more you know that you don't know? Can you imagine that? Is that possible?
I don't know.
To them, anything whose logic is not apparent is senseless, and they immediately turn it into an object of ridicule. Okay, there's a very interesting story. I don't want to skip that. The third sage, Rabbi Chia, taught that the blasphemer went out from the passage of Yehusi, meaning he claimed he was part of the tribe of Dan because his mother was, but it doesn't work like that. So this is very important because this is where it's going to lead to. He felt slighted. He felt slighted by Moses' rejection. Sorry, it only goes by the father, and your father's an Egyptian. So we're going to now get into this idea, when I say now, like in a minute, into how to treat a stranger, especially a convert, and I should say especially a convert, as anybody who's even a possibility of conversion. I mean, when I say conversion, to be a ger toshav is a type of conversion. You're going through a beis din and you're taking on a public oath that you're going to, honor the Torah to whatever obligation you are obligated in. It's that's what we talk about when Avraham and Sarah dealt with converts. Those were not Jewish converts. Those were converts to Bnei Noach. So I just want to read what he says. What you're doing is you're touching upon the issue of pride, feeling slighted by Moses' rejection of his claim and shamed by his legal defeat. The man got up and blasphemed. This seems like an extreme reaction, but is the nature of pride. There's no telling what it can do to a person. We have a mission in Pirkei Avot. What takes a person out of this world? Jealousy, lust, and the drive for honor. Basically, the bottom line is personality traits wield an immeasurable influence on human behavior, and if they are negative, they can drag a person from the highest of spiritual levels to the gutter of heresy and blasphemy. Bottom line, according to all three opinions, then teach us a lesson about the precarious nature of human virtue. In general, one can never assume that his position on the ladder of spiritual growth is safe and secure. The evil inclination lurks at every step, and the only solution is to proceed with constant vigilance. More specifically, one must stay far away from mockery and pride, for either can send any person, even one who had been on the level of prophecy and experienced divine revelation, into a downward spiral leading to the lowest forms of sacrilege and sin, as it is tragically did to the blasphemer in the wilderness. Now, as I did mention, there is a link to Hardcore Masorah website, where I believe this person gives a very tremendous, deep insight that every one of us should take to heart. If you notice, just a few verses later, right, that it talks about, remember we're in chapter 24, it mentions here that verse 22, there shall be one law for you. It shall be for the proselyte and the native alike, for I am Hashem your God. Okay? And so it's very important to know that in Judaism, we don't believe necessarily in equity, right? We believe in merit, and different people are holding in different places in their lives, in their spiritual journey, and whatever they were dished out at birth. It just is what it is. I know there's a very touchy subject today in the great old country called Artzot Habrit, right? The land of the covenant, the United States. Anyway, so the United States of America is dealing with these issues, and the Torah already addressed them 3,300 years ago. It's very important to know that it's one law. You got to follow the law. The guy who is an underdog, right? He's got a big chip on his shoulders, and it's not his fault. His father was not Jewish. And he's not allowed to be a Megadef. He can't blaspheme Hashem. And the law is the same. He's going to be put to death. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. Right? Now, knowing that, we have so many times the Torah tells us how to treat a ger or a zar, someone who's a stranger. And it's very important to know that, where are we at? Do not oppress the stranger. It says in Exodus 23:9, So we're in verse 24. So just before our Parsha, you shall not oppress the stranger, for you know how it feels to be a stranger, for you were strangers in Egypt. Rashi mentions right there, in many places, we were warned by the Torah that the stranger might turn around and return to his evil ways. But then it goes on, it's with the feelings. You have to worry about the feelings of the stranger. Don't oppress them, because they might go back to their evil ways. But the feelings of the stranger. Kama kashelo, how hard it is when he's put under this pressure. So what we have to do is we have to take into consideration, very important, and I want to read something from here. Even though there's no equity, nevertheless, that second part of that Rashi tells us we need to consider the feelings of the convert, or the stranger in this case, that we need to relate with his experience of feelings, right? He's feeling oppressed and he's feeling alienated. It may not be justified. Maybe it is. But either way, that's his feelings. And with this in mind, the tone changes. Rashi's statement reads more of a warning to us Jews not to mistreat the stranger, because we can understand about people making it hard for us. We had it bad, we had it hard, and maybe not 3,300 years ago, but every one of us has lived in Egypt, and Mitzrayim, if you understand what Mitzrayim means, a tight, constricted place. We've all experienced it, whether it's adolescence, whether before, whether it's after. We all have our own mishagas, as they say. Okay? And if we make it too hard for such a person, they will surely resort to the most unrefined of their former ways. Now, herein, the Torah actually does not call for just equity, okay, but responsiveness. It asks us to step back and consider the background and personal story of the individual. We should understand the stranger already has a lot to contend with. Then maybe they have no family. Maybe, who knows, whatever happened in their life. And quite possibly a lot of baggage. We should not make it harder for them. We should not make it harder for them. And I just want to read this last paragraph. And even more so, we need to consider that in choosing to be among the congregation of Israel, which was what both a convert and a ger toshav does. The convert is left with no other home. Can you imagine someone says, I believe in Judaism. I'm not a Jew, but I believe in Judaism. They're going to be kicked out of their church. They're going to, I shouldn't say that. Most likely, they're going to be kicked out of their community as well. Right? They're going to lose family. I know, I have students who are B'nai Noach that have experienced feeling nowhere. Not with the non-Jews, not with the Gentiles, and even the Jews do not fully accept them. So they're really, in a bind, between a rock and a hard place. Guess what? This is their home. And to the extent that we can, we should try to help to make a caring Israel for their home. It doesn't matter if we are personally offended by the person and their background. There's a lot of people that I meet that make me feel, I shouldn't say me, but people around me feel very uncomfortable. Maybe they have lots of tattoos. Maybe they have weird hairstyles. Maybe just the way they talk, right? With either the old Christian lingo or street talk. Certain people that I associate with, I can see how uncomfortable they are when these people are around. Based on this very text from Exodus, most of our poskim adhere to the opinion that even if an Egyptian turns to Israel to become a convert, especially because of their people's experience and suffering through the biblical plagues, and they're being host, meaning they hosted us, even if not very good ones to Israel, we are required to allow them to convert. By the way, it means when they don't enter the congregation, it means they're not allowed to marry Jews. They can marry each other. They can marry other Egyptian converts for 10 generations. Okay? We are not permitted to turn them away. The Torah calls us to make a home, even for the people that make us the most uncomfortable. Through empathy, we should consider the situation of another and temper our patience to their unrefinement, not looking for nor provoking a reason for someone to stumble, not waiting for a reason to disavow them. I think that's, I have one more thing I think I want to read. The Torah does not just call us to equality. It does not call for equity even, but it does call us to support those among us, make a place for them and to care for them, even if they don't deserve it, no matter how strange, no matter how difficult they are, native, born, or not. Okay, so I really skipped a lot just to get a lot of the main points across. What do I want to say? How do I want to end this off? Obviously, the Torah is relevant. That's obvious. Every letter, every phrase, every paragraph, it's God's message. We have a tradition what it means, and for those who are seeking what it means, by the time you get to that verse, right, the Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, Marash kills Yaakov, as we quoted in Deuteronomy chapter 33, you're going to say, oh, they're the ones. I mean, after reading this, I get it. They were there. They were there. They're the ones who are the gatekeepers, right? They're the ones that have the insight. All that the Torah is, and I'm not belittling it, it is Cliff Notes. It is the abbreviated version. Each letter is a whole universe. Volumes, look behind me. Volumes are written on each verse, meaning it was handed down traditionally, through tradition, what it means. I implore you, if you really want to know what the Torah means, go find your local Orthodox rabbis. Go find your local Orthodox family. Go find them and ask them what does it mean if you have any questions. Otherwise, right, that's the Rambam's main point when he says that an akum, an idol worshiper, should not learn Torah, not involve himself in Torah. Number one, because he's only looking for fights. But the main thing he says, he's looking to create his own religion. Okay, we have enough man-made religions. Enough of it. Enough of it. There's one religion that is not man-made, and that is the one that was given to millions of people at once, not to some drug addict, dope addict, I don't know, I can go on and on and on. You know, some lowlife who went up all on his own to some mountaintop and came down and said, God talked to me and here's my message. Right? We're talking about the real deal. And if you don't believe it, just open your eyes and look at Israel today. Okay? And so anyway, that's it. So anybody that wants to learn more, continue to listen to the rabbis. Just open your mind. And I'm praying for you. And we're looking forward to seeing you again next week. So I'm wishing everyone a great Shabbos and a great life. And we'll see you next week, Bezrat Hashem.
It's